He'd bark vaguely at her, tell her to take things, items. Get, give, hand me, hurry. Tell her to bring things to incomprehensible destinations and then claimed he'd said, leave it by the gate. He constantly asked her where things were, as though she were a walking inventory of everything he'd touched, seen, or ever thought about, long before she even existed. This is the thing about Eddies. Eddies have everyone running around after them, serving them, fetching for them, and when something is needed for someone other than themselves, they're nowhere to be found. They are geniuses at selfishly shelving themselves out of the way. I did try to intercede, and then I stopped. Because soon enough he had the two of us run wide, and me cooking extra food for her, and her refusing to eat, and wanting to be no bother. And when she was bothered, we were both bothered. We were so bothered, the two of us, by Eddie. I will be truthful. Are you ready for this? I did pray Eddie would die during the time in which the unfortunate was around. I had a novena of masses offered with this intention. I atoned by sending word above that I would take the unfortunate in and house her instead, if the Lord could relieve us of Eddie. I could imagine her bereft and me baking things to make her feel better, while silently knowing between the mashed up pastry folds we were both far better off now Eddie was buried. Except Eddie is not buried. Others are buried. Phil is buried. Because Phil was wrong, and that will get you buried. I have noticed that it's the decent people who are buried, while it's the parasites and demolishers who endure. Hence it's well worth joining the dead, rather than remaining to only more mashing and din. But why? Why didn't I release myself from Eddie, given the means I had to do it, what with the group and the tall man? But see here now, that's the difference between murder and mercy. The group are for mercy, not murder. You couldn't contradict that. I intend to say it in the court, but I may not have the chance. You'd be surprised how little is said in court, of any consequence. This has surprised me. By the time the judge finally has a chat with you, it's over and all decided. And he/she looks at you cross and says you shouldn't have done it. And that's not the time to start saying, well, you know, Your Honour, maybe there are a few things we could talk about out the back or over a bun. If Phil knew where I am now standing, she would see she was wrong. Are you listening, Phil? Because you should be. I hope the two ears are roasting on you, wherever you are. I hope your lobes are singed hot beneath the soil. He talked at her. Eddie talked at Bina, loudly, non-stop. He planned aloud what would never happen, like progress. Eddie couldn't talk in a normal voice. Most people cannot talk in a normal voice if they are stocious drunk, but Eddie couldn't manage normal even at 9 o'clock in the morning. He shouted. He was always shouting. He shouted when he was asking me to turn on the kettle. He shouted even to tell me the day looked warm. I imagined he was deaf, because I preferred that to the truth. He was ignorant. Because he never listened if you told him anything. He just shouted. Eventually, I stopped listening. I had to. No sane person could actually listen to his slop and remain sane. That voice was like a lawnmower inside my ear, finding nothing to mow but stones. They say they have evidence against me, evidence from Eddie. Someone phoned and warned me. I don't remember if it was redacted or not, as I stopped answering all phone calls and the messages mounted and blunted into a big blur of voice. I did this because I knew it would force the solicitor to come to my door. I don't know why I wanted to bring him to my door to deliver the news, but I can be stubborn this way. I think he knew I was doomed. I knew I was doomed, and I wanted to look at his face for confirmation.